I never imagined my peaceful family life would be shaken by a secret. So heavy, it threatened to break us. Arian, my stepson, had been acting strange. His glances lingered too long. His words carried emotions they shouldn't. One night, he confessed feelings I couldn't ignore, feelings I couldn't reciprocate. Torn between protecting my family and confronting this storm, I turned to my husband, Samson, for help. What followed was a test of love, trust, and the strength of our bond. Could we hold our family together, or would this secret tear us apart? Let me tell you my deep secret story. My name is Susan, and I want to tell you about something very serious that happened in my life. It is not easy to talk about, but I hope you will find out it is interesting and helpful. I got married to Samson 2 years ago. He is 51 and a good, kind, and hardworking man. Samson has a son named Arian. Arian was 16 when I became his stepmother at first, and now he is 18 plus. We didn't talk much in the beginning. He was quiet and I didn't want to push him. I thought he needed time to get used to me. Arian lived with us because his mother passed away when he was little. Samson worked long hours to achieve his career goal and success. This also allows Arian and I to spend a lot of time at home together. I tried to take care of him as much as needed, cook for him, keep his staff in order, laundry the clothes, and make the house feel warm. One day I asked him, "How was your school today, Arian?" He looked at me and said it was fine. That's all, he didn't say more. I smiled to him and spoke, "Okay, if you ever want to talk, I am here." He nodded and went to his room. Days turned into months, and slowly, Arian began to open up. He started telling me about school, his friends, and the things he liked. I was happy to listen, and I wanted him to feel like he had someone he could trust. Hello, listener. I am a woman of mid-40s, and my body type is athletic. Because of my medium shoulder, big bust, and curvy shape, my friends compliment me always. I am very sophisticated on my dress wear. I feel comfortable to keep me attractive and seductive. Samson always says he got turned on whenever he come home back from the work. I feel it's my only responsibility to keep him happy, to make my happy family. At the end of autumn, me and Arian had made the house clean together. Both of us helped each other a lot, and we had exchanged a lot of words and phrases regarding the work and making the house more beautiful. But then something changed. That evening, Samson was away on a work trip. We were eating dinner. Arian looked at me and said, "You are always very kind to me." I laughed a little and said, "Of course, Arian, I care about you." He looked at me for a long time. His eyes were soft. He's just a boy, I told myself again. But one evening, something happened that I couldn't ignore. That night, Samson had gone out with his friends. I was in the living room watching a TV series. Arian came and sat next to me. "What are you watching?" he asked. I told him it's a family drama, and we started talking. We laughed about some funny parts of the drama, and I felt at ease. But then Arian put his hand on mine. I froze. "Arian," I said softly. He looked at me and said, "I want to thank you. You've been so kind to me." I pulled my hand away gently. "You don't need to thank me, Arian, we're family," I said, trying to smile, but inside, I felt something was not right. And I went to bed early that night. But I couldn't sleep. My mind kept thinking about Arian's hand on mine. Was it just a kind gesture, or was it something else? I prayed it was nothing. I told myself, "You're overthinking. It's all innocent." But deep down, I knew things were changing. The days after that night, I felt strange. I tried to act normal, but things didn't feel the same. I avoided being alone with Arian as much as I could. I told myself it was better this way. But Arian didn't seem to notice. He still found ways to be close. If I was in the kitchen, he would come and talk to me. If I was folding laundry, he would sit nearby and help. It was hard to ignore him, but I tried my best. One afternoon, Samson was working late again. I was cleaning my bedroom when Arian came in. "Do you need help, Susan?" he asked. "No, I'm fine," I said quickly. I didn't want him to stay, but he didn't leave. Instead, he sat on the bedroom corner couch and watched me. "You're always so busy," he said. "You never rest." I smiled a little and said there's always something to do in the house. He stood up and walked over to me. "You do so much for us," he said. "You make this house feels alive." "Thank you, Arian," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached out and touched my shoulder. It wasn't a big gesture, but it made my heart race. "Arian," I said firmly, stepping back, "what are you doing?" He looked at me, his eyes full of emotion. I can hear he is breathing fast and feel he is smelling strong. "I don't know how to say this," he said, "but I care about you more than I should." I froze. My mind was spinning. "Arian, stop," I said. "You can't talk like that. I'm your stepmother." "I know," he said quickly. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to run away to make this stop, but I was too shocked to move. I saw Arian is trying to manage or hide his private parts, covering by hands or pulling down his dark gray long t-shirts. "Arian, this has to stop," I said finally. "This is not right. I love your father and I care about you like a son, nothing more." He nodded, but his face looked hurt. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I just needed you to know." He walked out of the room, and I locked myself in my bedroom. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I kept thinking about Samson and how much he trusted me. I felt like I had failed him even though I had done nothing wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Arian's words in my head. His fast breathing, his strong smell, imagination of his private parts, uneasy situation. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Samson? Should I ignore it and hope it never happened again? I decided to stay silent to the benefits of greater interest of family peace. I told myself it was just a moment of confusion for Arian, or it's an affection of his age which makes him think or dream to be close to me as I am the easy catch here, or he would move on. But deep down, I wasn't sure. I had heard a lot of this kinds of story in social media or localized gossip, never given importance on it. We always take those topics as a part of our coffee time fun, but today I felt those women who had faced these situations. We heard, we listen, we make fun, and never make a comment what we feel or share it. Somehow we all forgot our moral duty. Today I felt guilty somehow. Dear listener, please, at this point of story, I like to inform you not to forget to subscribe this channel. If you feel this story should be spread to the greater interest of the women's interest, then like and share it. Well, after that day, I avoided Arian as much as I could. I didn't want to talk to him, and I didn't want to be alone with him. I told myself if I keep my distance, things will go back to normal. But Arian didn't make it easy. He kept trying to talk to me. He would say things like, "Susan, can we talk?" Or, "I didn't mean to upset you." I always found a way to leave the room or change the subject. In days go through, one evening, Samson was home and I felt safe. We all had dinner together. Arian was quiet, but I could feel his eyes on me. I didn't look at him. I focused on Samson and tried to act normal. After dinner, Samson went to his study to work. I stayed in the kitchen cleaning up. Arian came in and stood by the door. I pretended not to notice him. "Susan," he said softly. I didn't answer. I kept washing the dishes. "Susan, please." He said, "I'm sorry for what I said before. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." I turned to him and said, "Arian, this is not something we can talk about. It's wrong, and it must stop." "I know," he said, his voice full of regret. I don't know how to stop feeling this way." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw how much he was struggling. He wasn't trying to hurt me or cause problems. He was confused just like I was. "Arian," I said gently, "this isn't good for you or for me. You need to find a way to move past this. You're a smart, kind young man. You have your whole life ahead of you." He nodded but didn't say anything. Then he walked out of the kitchen. I let out a deep breath, hoping this was the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, Samson had to leave for a business trip. I was nervous about being alone in the house with Arian, but I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't tell Samson what he would think of me. I never thought tonight I am going to experience the extreme brain stimulation in a torture manner, which will run through my life story and will make me fearful trust deficiencies and psychological. I wish I never had that night in my life. That evening, Arian knocked on my bedroom door. I didn't answer. "Susan," he said from the other side, "I just want to talk." "Go to bed, Arian," I said firmly. There was silence for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry for everything. I felt a pain of guilt." I didn't answer him, and eventually I heard him walk away. That night, I am feeling trapped. I loved Samson, and I wanted our family to be happy, but I didn't know how to fix this. Arian's feelings were not something I could control, and my silence was making everything worse. I started to wonder if I should tell Samson the truth, but what would happen if I did? Would he blame me? Would he get angry with Arian? The thought of breaking our family apart was too much to bear. So I stayed silent. I told myself it was the right thing to do. What could be your position in this very moment? You who are listening to my story, you may have your comments on the comments box for the people who might helped by that. In my mind, deep down, I knew the silence was only making things harder. Samson trip lasted a few days, and I was on edge the entire time. I kept busy around the house, avoiding any chance to be alone with Arian. I thought if I stayed strong and distant everything, it would settle down. But Arian didn't stop trying to talk to me every little thing. He did seem to carry a hidden meaning. A longer look, a softer tone, or the way he tried to be close to me, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Other evening, I was sitting in the balcony corner of the house. The air was fresh, and I thought it would help me clear my mind. I was staring at the flowers, lost in thought. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "Susan," Arian said quietly. I turned to see him standing there, his hands in his pockets. I sighed. "What is it, Arian?" "Can we talk just for a minute?" he said. I didn't want to, but I nodded. "Okay, what do you want to say?" He sat down on the bench next to me, but kept some distance. And he starts saying, "I've been thinking a lot. I know I've made things hard for you. I didn't mean to." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. I don't know how to stop feeling what I feel," he said, looking down at the ground. "But I don't want to hurt you or Dad." I felt a mix of sadness and frustration. In my brain, I was thinking, maybe I am not seeing what I need to see. Arian, he is a young, healthy man, full of energy and stressless mind, a wealthy dad's son. and I am alone, living and moving in front of his eyes all the time. Maybe my seductive look and outfit or style or my friendly gesture had an impact to him, but I can't change me when I am his father's wife, and I have my duty to make him happy. I say myself, I am not for everybody. I am for me and my belongings. In a mini-second, I pull me back in the reality stage. Arian, you must understand something I said, softly. I love your father. He's a good man, and I want us to be a happy family. What you're feeling is normal for someone in your age, but you need to let it go. He nodded, but didn't look at me. I've tried, he said, but it's hard. I know it's hard, I said, but it's the right thing to do. You're a good person, Arian. You'll find someone who feels the same way about you, but it's not me. We sat in silence for a long time. I hoped my words would help him understand. I wanted to believe that this was the end of it. That night, I locked my bedroom door again. I was afraid of what might happen if I didn't. I didn't want to think that Arian would do anything wrong, but I also didn't trust the situation. The next morning, Arian was quiet. He barely said a word at breakfast, and he left the house early. I felt a sense of relief, but also worry. I didn't know what he was thinking or what he might do next. When Samson came home that evening, I felt a wave of safety wash over me. I wanted to tell him everything, but I couldn't find the courage. I didn't want to ruin the peace. We had that night as I lay in bed next to Samson. He was cuddling with me. I can feel his warm breath and his bites on my neck. I feel the strong essence of Samson, his invitations of desire. I feel he is hardening. I feel my body also driving towards his desire. For me, it feels that I am eagerly looking for freedom from a long prison of mind. And we played our essence, full, intimate role of life. I feel Samson is my savior from drowning down of my life. I feel the taste of freedom today. After such a beautiful feeling, I feel grateful to Samson to give me the break of my mind. Samson is sleeping deep. In last 2 years of our married life, this is the funny part. He falls asleep immediately after sex. He can't keep his eyes open after that. I adore this. That night I was awake for long, and I realized I couldn't keep this secret forever. The silence was tearing me apart, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold it in. The silence was heavy on my heart. I couldn't sleep that night even with Samson next to me. I kept thinking about what had happened and what might happen next. I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The next morning, I decided after breakfast, I asked Samson if we could talk. It's important, I said. He looked surprised but nodded. We sat in the living room couch. Arian had gone out, so it was just the two of us. My hands were shaking, and I could barely look at him. Samson, I began, I need to tell you something. His face grew serious. What is it, Susan? I took a deep breath. It's about Arian. He leaned forward, his concern clear. What about him? Is he okay? He said. Yes, he's okay, I said quickly. But he's been struggling with something, and it's been hard for me too. At this very moment, I don't find the way where to start and how to start. What part I will say, what part not. Which one will make it peaceful? Which one will make extreme situation? Then I pull me together, and gradually I told him everything. I told him how Arian had been acting differently, how he had said things that made me uncomfortable, and how I had tried to handle it on my own. I didn't blame Arian, but I didn't hide the truth either. I told him not to handle this as a father nor a husband. I told him I want my family intact and asked him to solve this as a boy's problem. Samson listened without interrupting. His face changed from confusion to anger to sadness. When I finished, he sat back and rubbed his face with his hands. I can't believe this, he said softly. My son, my own son. I'm sorry, I said, tears in my eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. Samson looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. You should have told me sooner, Susan. I could have helped. I was scared, I admitted. I didn't want to ruin our family. He nodded slowly. I understand, but we need to fix this. I need to talk to Aryan when Aryan came home. Later that day, Samson sat with him into the living room. I stayed in the bedroom, my heart pounding. I could hear their voices, but I couldn't make out the exact words. After a long time, Samson came to me. He looked tired but calm. We talked. He said Aryan knows what he did was wrong. He's going to travel for a few weeks with his friend to overcome from it, and to give us all some space. I felt a wave of relief but also sadness. Do you think he'll be fine? I asked. He'll need time, but he's young. He'll learn and move on, Samson said. I nodded, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders for the first time in weeks. I felt like things might be okay again. That night, as Samson and I sat together on the living room couch, he was rubbing my hair. We'll get through this, he said together. I looked at him and nodded. Yes, together. Laying my head on Samson's laps, I feel his essence, and by sounds of his breaths tells me an unfortunate rhythm of his minds. In that instant, I understood that my family had made the initial move towards the recovery of the path of fragile family. Dear listener, you who came till to the end point of the story, please don't forget to subscribe this channel. If you feel this story should be spread to the greater interest of the women's, then like and share it, and have your comments as if it's your moral responsibility to build a healthy society. Thank you for listening and hope to see you here soon.